In this subject, I've learned a lot, especially if what I can do for those people who are special needs. And the five major concepts that I've learned in this subject are addressing diversity through the years, making school inclusive, typical and atypical development among children, learners with additional needs, and learners in other marginalized groups. The first concept that I choose is the addressing diversity through the years, a special and inclusive education. In this lesson, I learned that if you want to become an effective special need or inclusive teacher, lies not in one's skills to teach strategically, but in one's willingness and commitment to respect individual differences. In this chapter, I understand that diversity is a natural part of every environment and must be perceived as a given rather than an exception. Also, in this chapter, I realized that everyone has a right to education, and having a disability must not be an excuse for being deprived access to schools. Neither should poverty, religion, nor race. Inclusive understood, appreciated, and prepared for within the context of society by accepting of individual differences. And for the nation to be truly inclusive must start from humane perspective of disability and transformative mindset on inclusion. Because the success of inclusive education starts with an appreciation and acceptance of diversity, reinforced by a supportive and genuinely inclusive mindset. The second concept is making school inclusive. In this lesson, I've learned how to provide insights and practical tips in cultivating inclusive habits and implementing such practices in classroom effectively. And it is entirely based on the Booth and Ainscow framework to help schools determine their next steps and action plans if they want to restructure into becoming more inclusive. This chapter aims me how I will handle my students with special needs, in which I will respond effectively to educational needs of my future students with additional needs and to create safe, inclusive, and culturally responsive learning environments for my future students with additional needs. The concept that I've chosen is typical and atypical development among children. While discussing this lesson, it takes my interest in which children development, which is the pattern of growth, change, and stability that occurs from conception up until adolescence. I learned that those students in an inclusive classroom know their capabilities, which it can help me as a future educator to find out more about their development and the typical and atypical development among children from infancy to adolescence and the various stages of their development. The fourth concept that I've chosen is chapter 6, which is all about the learners with additional needs. In this lesson, I've learned that children learn every day, and this happens in various settings and different ways. Also, this lesson helps me to identify the various additional needs learners might have, differentiate the additional needs from one another, and to recognize the characteristics of learners with additional needs. And the last concept that I've chosen is chapter 7, which is all about the learners in other marginalized groups. In this chapter, I understand what marginalization means, specifically in the area of education. Marginalization traces its roots to the theory of the marginal man, which at first pointed to the peculiar personality traits that arise when a person is situated in a marginal position among two social environments that are not completely matched. I learned about the different groups that are marginalized in society and in education, and also the process that could be used to identify issues of marginalization in class or in classroom. It might be the situations that a person is not aware having that marginalization issues, and it is important for us and the adults in the school community to be aware of this so that an appropriate response can be given. All these concepts will help me as a future teacher, and I will apply this to my future students, especially those students are with special needs, by creating safe, inclusive, and culturally responsive learning environment for them. I will use my knowledge to generalize and specialize curricula to individualize learning for students with additional needs. and to demonstrate reflective thinking and professional self-direction.